If you like what I do, consider joining my channel or donating to my coffee. Links in the description. Happy 250th birthday, America! And what better way to celebrate the big 250 than by talking about one of the most American Metroidvanias ever made, Blast Brigade versus the Evil Legion of Dr. Cread. A game so packed with explosions, one-liners, and Saturday morning cartoon patriotism that you practically have to salute it when you boot it up. And what's not to like about Blast Brigade? It's loud, colorful, and has an over-the-top action comedy tone that feels ripped straight out of an 80s or 90s animated blockbuster. Big guns, big personalities, big set pieces. You'll love to see it. You play as Jeff Jefferson, the all-American hero of Blast, an organization dedicated to battling global supercrime. He's great at what he does, but he's also sort of a bimbo with a track record of being... what's the opposite of subtle? Oh, reckless and explosive. But gosh darn it, he loves his guns almost as much as he loves the US of A. Anyway, his plane gets shot down while on a mission, and that's when the game truly starts. Should you answer your country's call and join the Blast Brigade on their mission? Or is this a cause not worth fighting for?
Combat.
Blast Brigade's combat is loud and unapologetically explosive. Exactly what you'd expect from a game that wears its action cartoon DNA on its sleeve. At its core, the game's a run-and-gun twin-stick shooter. This gives combat a fast, arcade-like rhythm where positioning matters just as much as accuracy. But what matters even more is ammo. You can equip 2 guns at a time, a primary and secondary, and they can be swapped on the fly. Primary guns have infinite ammo with finite clips that, when used up, take a moment to reload. However, your ammo will reload automatically and without a reload animation if you just don't shoot for a few seconds. That's actually a really nice quality of life mechanic I'd like to see used in other games. Your secondary gun, on the other hand, has finite ammo that can only be refilled when you pick up a certain icon. Blast Brigade's most notable feature is its swappable characters, though it actually takes a while before you even get your second character, like 2 or 3 hours, give or take, which is a long time to get to your game's hook, in my opinion. And that seems to be a running theme for Blast Brigade. It takes its sweet time to really get interesting. I'd definitely consider this game a slow burn MV. Anyway, as you progress, you unlock new heroes, each with unique weapons and abilities that change how you approach combat, but they all also share the same HP and weapon charges. Swapping between heroes mid-fight lets you chain abilities, break defenses, and adapt to enemy types. Some areas even require specific abilities, like Jeff's grenades that break walls, or Shura's grappling hook that flings you off rings so you can reach elevated platforms, blending combat and traversal into a cohesive loop. Some of these special abilities require charges, this blue meter here, and recharging your charges is much less generous than re-upping your standard gun's ammunition. The only way to regain this meter besides dying or hitting a hammock, this game's save points, is to pick up blue lightning icons, typically dropped by enemies or bosses mid-fight after you deal so much damage or stun them in some special way. Speaking of bosses, the boss fights were a standout. Big, flashy, multi-phase encounters that demand pattern recognition, quick dodging, and a smart use of your abilities. I liked their designs. Some can be pretty tough and hectic, and a few of them have a heavy, puzzly aspect to them that keeps encounters fresh. Now, let's talk about combat in general. Personally, I'm not a big fan. Combat's fine, but the game does 2 things that I just don't like in run and guns. One, none of the guns feel very impactful. Some of these bosses and enemies are so tanky, and the cartoon aesthetic really doesn't make chipping away at their health look or feel impactful. Sometimes, it's all about presentation. And then there's my number 2 pet peeve for shooters. My bullets disappear after traveling only 5 feet, or 1.524 meters for my non-American viewers. Dude, I irrationally hate this so much. I get maybe an energy-based weapon might dissipate after traveling so far, but a machine gun? I'm not even arguing for realism in my cartoon shooter game. I just want my video game guns to be more fun to shoot. Is that too much to ask? That's it for combat. Blast Brigade's combat nails the Saturday morning cartoon chaos it's going for, but it's a mixed bag in practice. The twin-stick gunplay is fast and flexible, the character swapping abilities add welcome depth, and the boss fights deliver big, flashy set pieces that keep you on your toes. But the slow burn pacing, stingy ability charge economy, and lack of impact in the weapons, plus those short-range disappearing bullets, hold the experience back from greatness. It's fun, it's explosive, and it fits the game's tone perfectly. It just doesn't always feel as punchy or satisfying as a run and gun should.
Abilities, platforming.
This is interesting because you'd think, being a run and gunner, Blast Brigade's strongest pillar would be its combat. And though that pillar is strong, Blast Brigade really flexes its muscles in its abilities and platforming. Once you start unlocking new heroes, each one brings a traversal tool that meaningfully expands how you move through the island. Jeff's grenades break walls and open new routes. Shura's grappling hook lets you fling yourself across massive gaps, as well as Galahad's magnetic arm and Vortex's teleportation chakram, adding mobility tricks that lend to fun traversal and tricky platforming sections. The platforming itself is snappy and intuitive, but can also be surprisingly demanding. Grapple rings require tight timing, environmental hazards punish sloppy movement, and some late-game traversal challenges feel closer to action platformer gauntlets than traditional MV exploration. But these more challenging sections are more often than not optional. Something else fun about Blast Brigade's platforming is its biome set pieces. The sewers has all those rings to fling yourself off of and doo-doo water to avoid. And then there's that part in the cold biome where those huge lasers are trying to evaporate you. There are a lot of gimmicks to play around with, and it's all cool and memorable stuff. As far as puzzles are concerned, they're mostly optional, but there are some doozies in there that took me a little while to figure out. I'd say there's at least one difficult noodle scratcher in each biome. That's it for this section. Blast Brigade's platforming ends up being the game's real standout. It has clever traversal, fun biome gimmicks, and genuinely tricky optional puzzles. Each new hero adds a meaningful movement tool, turning exploration into a satisfying chain of grapples, grenades, and teleports. Platforming's snappy and intuitive, but it isn't afraid to demand precision, and the environmental set pieces give each biome its own memorable flavor. It's easily one of the game's strongest pillars, and the part that most consistently kept me engaged.
Progression.
Blast Brigade's progression is surprisingly robust for a game that plays itself off as a mindless, cartoony shooter. Underneath all the explosions and one-liners are numerous systems that create character enhancement loops that keep you hooked. On the MV spectrum, Blast Brigade is a hollow-like, a term that I'm coining and using for the first time. A hollow-like is a Metroid-like, a Metroidvania where your main enhancements and upgrades are found through exploration, with a character modifier feature like Hollow Knight's charms. Blast Brigade fits this description, which also means there are no XP and leveling systems, no stat enhancing gear, and no skill trees. Your core stats, HP and energy, increase through exploration and upgrades, giving you more survivability and more ability charge freedom as the game ramps up. But the real backbone of progression is the PDA battery system, this game's charms. Batteries act as your build currency, if you will. Each battery slot comes with a line of modules, and to activate that line, you have to slot in a battery. And though that line is now powered, you can only choose one battery per line, and modules on any given line are fixed, so there's no mixing and matching between lines. It's a unique twist on the system that forces meaningful choices when it comes to player expression. Want more raw firepower, more ability charges, better resource drops? It's all in the modules. But you can't equip everything at once, so you're always tuning your loadout for the next biome or boss. Now, let's talk about the hub, your base camp. I love base building in Metroidvanias, and Blast Brigade's base camp is pretty cool. You need to find a specific item while exploring to build things and expand your base, and as you rescue characters and bring them back to the camp, you unlock new vendors. Vendors can be leveled up by spending money, which you earn by finding chests and blasting bad guys, and each vendor tier expands what you can buy, like more modules and, more importantly, guns. There's also crafting, but that's reserved for 2 very special guns and will basically take you the entire game to complete. And that's just one of many side quests you can engage with. There are several NPCs that you can get quests from, and these quests can range from finding helmets to hunting down optional bosses to doing sequence of events in order to get a donut. Quests are varied, eccentric, and above all, rewarding. That'll do it for progression. Blast Brigade's progression ends up being far richer than its cartoony exterior suggests. It's a true Hollow-like, built around exploration-driven upgrades and a clever module system that lets you shape your build without ever touching XP bars or skill trees. Batteries and modules form the heart of your character expression, pushing you to make meaningful choices about power, survivability, and ability economy. The base camp adds another satisfying layer, letting you expand vendors, unlock new gear, and invest in a growing hub that you'll love to watch grow. And with crafting, optional bosses, eccentric NPC quests, and collectible-driven upgrades sprinkled across the island, Blast Brigade's progression loop stays consistently rewarding.
Exploration.
Blast Brigade's exploration starts out fairly linear, funneling you through tight routes until the mid-game finally blossoms into a true Metroidvania loop built around ability-gated paths, hidden puzzles, and clever environmental design. The island's biomes, jungles, sewers, icy cliffs, volcanic labs, are colorful, distinct, and packed with secrets, traversal gimmicks, and optional challenges that should make backtracking quote-unquote rewarding. I'll get back to those quotes in a minute. First, the good stuff. Every room in this game has 1 or 2 things to find and collect, so being observant pays off. Batteries, modules, legendary weapon parts, chests, HP and energy pieces, and base camp expansion items are tucked everywhere, giving you constant incentive to poke into corners and revisit old areas with new abilities. And if you're like me and most Metroidvania enjoyers, you love returning to older biomes with fresh tools just to see what opens up. Blast Brigade delivers on that, but not as effectively as you'd hope. Backtracking is almost exclusively tied to optional rewards. Besides a few exceptions, most biomes are one and dones unless you're chasing side quests or collectibles. There's nothing wrong with that structure. Plenty of people prefer biomes as levels over open exploration. But here's where things get complicated and why I put those quotes up earlier. Even though most backtracking is optional, it's rarely fun. Blast Brigade has a handful of issues that make revisiting areas extremely tedious. 1, characters move too slow. 2, rooms tend to be ginormous. 3, biomes have very few shortcuts, forcing you to slog through these enormous rooms. And 4, fast travel sucks. I wanted to get some extra footage for this review and gosh, was trying to find a way back to a fast travel motorcycle so obnoxious. As much as there is to love about this game, I absolutely cannot stand backtracking in it. And that's a fatal flaw for any Metroidvania. By the end, I was exhausted. I hit 92% map completion, every area, almost every collectible, and I just couldn't do it anymore. The combination of slow movement, giant rooms, few impactful shortcuts, and bad fast travel was just too much. At nearly 14 hours, Blast Brigade definitely overstays its welcome if you're aiming for 100%. And that's why I said exploration is so complicated. If backtracking and collecting items isn't your thing, then you won't have a problem with Blast Brigade's exploration. But you will have a problem with the rest of the game because you'll be underpowered. So your best bet is to engage in the game's tedious backtracking. But it's not all doom and gloom. The map itself is fantastic. Room shapes are accurate, points of interest are labeled automatically, and my only real complaint is that sometimes there are elevators that move you between biomes, but the map doesn't show where they go. A small but annoying omission. And that'll do it for exploration. Blast Brigade's exploration ends up being a mixed bag, packed with secrets, upgrades, and colorful biomes that should make revisiting areas exciting, yet held back by slow movement, oversized rooms, sparse shortcuts, and clunky fast travel. The game nails the Metroidvania fundamentals with ability-gated paths, meaningful collectibles, and a map that's genuinely great at tracking your progress, but the act of backtracking rarely feels enjoyable. If you're the type who loves hunting down every upgrade, you'll find plenty to chase, but you'll also feel the weight of the game's pacing issues long before you hit 100%. In the end, exploration is rewarding in theory, but exhausting in practice. A strong concept undermined by the moment-to-moment experience.
Atmosphere, narrative.
Blast Brigade goes all in on its Saturday morning cartoon identity. Loud, colorful, and drenched in 80s action movie cheese. Its breezy tone and comedic personality are anchored by Jeff Jefferson's wisecracking, Deadpool-adjacent, over-the-top action hero shenanigans. And the voice work does a great job at conveying that air of goofiness needed to sell the game's goofy content.
You were dealing with me, the ingenious
Dr. Sneed, right?
Cread! It's Creed, okay? Calvin Cornelius Creed! All right, stay calm, Cornelius. Just stick to the script. Don't let this brute get the best of you.
Hey, sorry to interrupt your inner monologue, but do you maybe want to skip to the part where you tell me about your evil plan?
Well, why not? Behold my genius plan, you slobbering simpleton. No. Next slide. First step, build a giant death robot. Next step, conquer the world. So I can accomplish the final step of my ingenious plan. Eat a donut!
The world itself feels like a comic book come to life. Bold colors, exaggerated animations, chunky explosions, and high-quality character art. Each biome leans into its own aesthetic, from neon green sewers to icy laser-filled cliffs, giving the island a strong sense of place and visual identity. Even when the exploration or pacing falters, the presentation never does. Narratively, Blast Brigade keeps things simple. The story's intentionally lighthearted, with humor sprinkled throughout. Most of the plot is told via dialogue and cutscenes, but there are notes and records you can read for some light world building, though most of these text entries are flavor text to elicit a laugh. The story is fine for what it is, just don't expect anything too deep or for there to be any multiple endings. That's it for this section. Blast Brigade's atmosphere is easily one of its most consistent strengths, a colorful, cartoony world brought to life with sharp art, chunky explosions, and a goofy, self-aware tone that never takes itself too seriously. The story leans on humor, expressive voice work, and comic book flair rather than deep lore or branching paths. It's simple, energetic, and charming, giving the game a fun personality that carries the experience even when other systems stumble. If you're here for style and laughs, Blast Brigade delivers.
Final thoughts and score.
Blast Brigade is a stylish, cartoony action game with plenty of personality and a handful of genuinely great ideas. Its explosive content, clever and abundant traversal abilities, colorful biomes, and charming presentation give it a strong identity, and when the game's firing on all cylinders, it's a fun, energetic ride. But slow pacing, tedious backtracking, and weapons that don't feel as punchy as they look keep it from reaching its full potential. It's a good time with noticeable caveats, a game that shines brightest in its style and movement rather than its moment-to-moment action. I award Blast Brigade vs. the Evil Legion of Dr. Cread a 7.5 out of 10. Blast Brigade is available on PC and all major consoles. I played Blast Brigade exclusively on the Steam Deck with zero issues, and therefore give it a Steam Deck rating of verified.
Tier placement.
Blast Brigade's a tough one for me to place. Personally, I didn't enjoy it. It starts out strong, then meanders for a couple of hours until you unlock Shura, ramps up a bit, but never really finds a satisfying stride. And that's because it never settles into a comfortable middle ground between being an action game and being a Metroidvania. As an action game, it's pretty good, but as a Metroidvania, the pacing is just off. Your character is slow, unlocking abilities is slow, getting to the game's main hook of character swapping is slow, and when you drop all that slowness into a huge world with bad fast travel, the tedium sets in pretty fast. But Blast Brigade isn't a bad action game or a bad Metroidvania. It's just a rough combination of the two. I know a lot of people like this game, and I can see why. The presentation is top shelf, the run and gun action is fun, and who doesn't love the tongue-in-cheek homages to old action movies? That's why Blast Brigade is so tough to place. Even though I feel it wears out its welcome early, I can also see everything it does well. Blast Brigade versus the evil legion of Dr. Cread explodes the C tier. I can see why a lot of people love Blast Brigade, and I definitely think it's worth playing if you have even a passing interest in twin-stick shooting in your platformer. Just be prepared for some poor pacing and Creadious backtracking.